What's going on there, folks? Good morning, good afternoon. It is the Earthmaster back here with an update video here on this wonderful weekend, Saturday, September 30th, 2023, about 11:34 a.m. Don't forget the drawing is being held later this afternoon, 2 o'clock my time, 2 o'clock Pacific time, the 100,000 subscriber giveaway drawing. So we do have some activity stirring up out here into the California region, Northern California to be exact. We did have a 4.7 stirring things up out here earlier this morning, just outside the Eureka and Fortuna region. I think we all know what's around this area, and that is the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone. Now, there's other faults and whatnot here at the surface, but down there at about 26 kilometers deep or so, that's the subduction zone region here of the Cascadia megathrust area. And a little bit of activity stirring up here early this morning. We have seen a 4.7 as a main quake. Hopefully it's just a main quake. It was felt around the Eureka area, mainly across the northern coast here of California. Not so much over here in the valley, but a few reports being felt there earlier this morning from this 4.7. Also 3.7 about an hour later, and then another hour later a 4.2. And the most recent one here, a 2.1, a little bit deeper here. But still within that cluster, it looks like it's still underneath automatic status, so it has not yet been reviewed. But far as I know, this main quake here has, if we look at that, it has been reviewed by a seismologist. And it's down there into the subduction zone. This area does see a little bit of earthquake activity on occasion. This is the last, I pulled up the last 10 years or so. Seems like they want to have a 6-pointer or so in this area every couple years. Our last one was back last year in December, where we're seeing that 6.4 stirring things up out here. That was about 17 kilometers deep as well, roughly within that same area where the earthquake activity is occurring today. But again, the culprit of it is going to be the Cascadia subduction zone. That's why these quakes are forming. The megathrust subduction zone out here is what the culprit is in these earthquakes. And you can see here on this map as well. This is from the Wikipedia article. This is USGS map here, I believe. Northern California, southern end is right about here. This is where the southern end hits. But also at the same time, you're looking at a combination of different plate dynamics out here. You got the plate boundary here. The Pacific and the North American plate boundary. This is not a subduction zone, although there's some thrust faults off of it. The main plate boundary is not a thrust type fault. All this activity kind of stirs up here against a Mendocino triple point junction area, and that's the area that sees the triple point area. Pacific plate over here to the west on the left side of this line, and the North American side of the plate boundary on the right side of this line. But also, you run into, what do you got here? The Gorda plate, or a section of the Juan de Fuca plate. A lot of people like to call this plate the Juan de Fuca plate as a whole, but technically there's 3 little separate plates here. This is going to be the Gorda plate being subducted underneath the North American plate. Eventually, that will be gone eventually, far as the dynamics go. This is a spreading seafloor center out here around the Gorda Ridges. You can see new land being created, but this little plate eventually will be gone, and the subduction zone will be transformed. But that's way into the future. But for now, we have to worry about the big one happening out here along the Pacific Northwest, and that's the 9-pointer that's possible out here across the Cascadia. There's a wealth of information out here when you type in Cascadia subduction zone. I did that here in Google just a few minutes ago, and pretty much everything you wanted to know about the Cascadia is there. Here's a little map showing how the subduction zone works here. This is the coast range here of Northern California, Oregon, and Washington. Is pretty much just a cutout section of it. And, well, that's not going to help out, is it? I mean, that little. Can you guys see it? Probably not. Let's see if I can find a different one. This one here, though, mid-ocean ridge. This is a little bit separate. Anyway, it's a big subduction zone that sits off the Northern California, Oregon, Washington, and the Vancouver Island Range subduction zone. And this is where the main quake would probably hit if we're looking at a entire rupture of the Cascadia subduction zone. Goodness, man, there's just so many ads popping up here. Okay, we're just going to get off of that. But, yeah, 9-pointer. 1700 was the last time that kicked up here across the Pacific Northwest, and that will create some major damage. I did have a shake map here. Here we go. Here's a shake map on the Wikipedia article. Now, this is where, this is just a scenario by the USGS based on a 9.0 Cascadia subduction zone. And that's what they believe is the expected magnitude for when this does kick up. Stand by for just a second. There we go. I had to cough. I picked up a little cold overnight. Seems like somewhere one of the kids were sick. So, of course, I'm going to get sick too, right? But the drawing will still be held today. Shake map here shows some significant shaking out here across the northern areas, northwestern areas of the United States, down here, even where I live outside of Chico. When the big one hits, this is just a scenario, but when the big one hits, we're probably going to be in the yellow to orange range. Here in Northern California, that's going to be strong to very strong shaking. And of course, along the coast is not the spot to be. You're going to deal with some violent to extreme and very heavy damage once that 9-pointer strikes. And that pretty much covers the entire coastline up here across the Pacific Northwest. And if you make it through that, hopefully you want to head to higher ground, because the tsunami would come a short time later to inundate this whole area across the coastline. I've covered this numerous times in the past. It's a big deal. It's always good to be prepared. Unfortunately, last time I was up here, I chatted with a few folks, local folks around the Brookings area and other areas up around Gold Beach, Oregon, and chatted with them about, if they're aware of what's sitting offshore. When they think earthquake, they think Southern California is going to have a big one, but they don't realize, a lot of people don't realize, unfortunately, that the big one sits right next to them. That's the Cascadia megathrust area. This one's going to be a much bigger earthquake than the San Andreas Fault once that decides to go as well. Coincidentally, or maybe not, these two sections here have a history. The southern branch of the San Andreas Fault kicked off about 300 and something years ago. Could be around the same time as the Cascadia, around 1700 or so. 300 years ago, 323 years ago, yeah, I would say there could be a relation between these two. I don't know if one could trigger the other, possibly, but the time frame from the southern branch here of the San Andreas Fault, as far as the big one goes, full rupture here, and the time frame for the Cascadia are pretty equal in terms of the last big one. So continue to watch that. We have seen some 6-pointers here historically. Doesn't mean it's going to pop. But still, whenever earthquake activity kicks up like this, it makes me, just want to put out that notification here that one day, it could be tomorrow, could be today, could be in 100 years. Cascadia runs roughly between 280 to up, I think, 400-year intervals of, between major ruptures, and it's been 323 years, so we're up there, we're getting up there. But also, this area can see a partial rupture, not a full rupture, a partial rupture, which could be a magnitude 8.2, 8.7. When you get into the 9-point range, that's going to be the full rupture out here across the Cascadia. But the southern branch here, Northern California, and this area right about here, has seen partial rupture intervals throughout its history. Cascadia subduction zone. Let's see if I can get this set up here real quick. Oops, I spelled that. Here we go. This map might work. Let's see here. Is this one going to be a decent one to look at? I think. Here we go. Yeah, and how they know, how they know these years and intervals is because of all the samples they've taken out here across the coastline due to giant deposits from the tsunami bringing quite a bit of stuff back out to sea, giant underwater landslides. There's a whole bunch of information on here, explains how these sediments came about from large earthquakes and whatnot throughout history. And on this map here, the big ones, looks like we've had a little bit bigger than 9-pointer. The last one was a 9-pointer, more than 315 years ago. This was put out, obviously a few years ago, it looks like. There is the 8-pointer, looks like maybe an 8.7 or so, prior to that 9-pointer that we've seen back in 1700. And if you look at history here, we've seen some bigger than 9-pointers along this subduction zone, the Cascadia. But it's been a while, so is it possible we could be maybe overdue just for an 8-pointer? Possibly, if you look at these intervals here. Or it could be another big one. But I think we're getting close, right? I think we're getting close on this time frame. There was a pretty good gap here, 500 years, in between these intervals. But if you look at the majority here, I would say we're getting close here to seeing something, whether it's just a mid-8. I shouldn't say just a mid-8 because that's going to be damaging itself. But not quite as powerful as a full 9.0 or a full 9.2. Some of these models showing, or 9 point, looks like maybe 9.1, 9.13. But yeah, last earthquake there in 1700, a 9.0. Rupture length was the entire section, 627 miles there of the Cascadia, and that 8.1, 137 mile rupture. That was 615 years ago, back in 1400. So this, let's see how much information this page has. Not a lot, but you can find a whole bunch of information in regards to the Cascadia and the potential of future quakes and, the studies of past quakes here by, let's see. I don't know if there's much more information on here, but I will leave this link here in the description of this update video for folks to check out. For now, see what else we got here across the West Coast. It is somewhat active, though. We are seeing things kind of kick up out here across the West Coast, along with the movement up here across the Cascadia. Let's see what we got for 2.5 and above. Well, we did have one way down here into the Bridgeport area, just north of the border, off of the San Andreas Fault. Actually off of the Imperial Fault here, outside of El Centro. That earthquake coming in yesterday. But I know we have had some further earthquake activity a little bit further up north. That one coming in late last night, 2.4. And some other activity up across the plate boundary here in the creeping segment. But it's somewhat elevated here across the area in the last 24 hours. I didn't quite get a chance to do an update last night. It was pretty busy. Had a bunch of rain come in, so I had to get everything covered and everything waterproof, so to speak, outside. Weren't really expecting that much, but it rained almost an inch here where I'm at, just outside of Chico. It was welcome, that's for sure. Maybe that's why I'm a little bit sick here today. I don't know. All right, so watch the West Coast. Things stirring up out there. Idaho got a little bit of activity across the Sawtooth Fault system. And Yellowstone National Park, I don't think we have too much going on. Let me check here real quick. Yellowstone. A little bit smaller earthquake activity, it looks like overnight. Going to be some small quakes here. But generally, throughout the last 12 hours or so, you can see that things are pretty mellow for the most part there across the Yellowstone National Park. All right, see what we got here for worldwide activity. One earthquake way up here near the Davis Strait. It's been a while since I've seen any activity up here. 4.2, that one coming in yesterday. The Atlantic Ocean seeing things slightly kick up here. It looks like 5.2 from yesterday. Where's all our newer activity? That's from yesterday as well. 5.2 down in the South Sandwich Trench. I believe south of Australia here did see some movement as well. 5.8 west of the Macquarie Island region. That's on the plate boundary here. And with that being said, we've got to keep New Zealand in mind here with that sitting right on the plate boundary. Should see some activity stir up here. But far as the western Pacific goes, a handful of earthquakes, it looks like. But a lot of this movement here across Fiji and Indonesia Islands area from yesterday. Right now, I think we in that teeter-totter effect here, potentially along the west coast. Keep an eye on the west coast here. Let me check New Zealand here real quick and see what we have, and then I gotta get ready to do that drawing here in just about 2 hours. Now it's almost noon west coast time here, so 2 hours at 2 o'clock Pacific time, and we'll get that drawing done. Pick out 10 people. 3 hours ago, 2.9, 2.8, 6 hours ago, most of this activity stirring up there across the eastern coast of the North Island. It doesn't look like we've seen anything major here overnight across New Zealand. Handful of earthquakes, it looks like. Most of it, again, up north. But I would definitely keep an eye there across the New Zealand area with that movement taking place there yesterday down south here along this plate boundary. All right, the big island of Hawaii. Anything stirring up out here? A little bit of movement, looks like, across the Pahala area. Kilauea Volcano still taking a pause there across the region. I don't know if it's a pause or if it's just come to a stage here where we may not see any activity for a couple of years. You never know. It does stir up. It also does take some longer breaks. So not a whole lot going on out there across Hawaii for now. Up into the Alaska area, a handful of earthquakes, but this is all typical across that region far as a plate boundary goes. Looks somewhat active over here across the Mediterranean. Let me see what we got on the globe. Some fours kicking off here. We do have outside of the Spain area 4.0 coming in early this morning. A little bit of activity further into the Morocco region. Excuse me. That 4.0 coming in about 1 o'clock my time. And some activity across Turkey, outside Turkey in the Greece region here. 4.1 out into the Sea of Crete. That earthquake coming in early this morning. So a little bit of uptick here, stirring up across the divergent boundaries. Well, divergent boundary, I think this is what kicked off all this activity here today. This was yesterday, this 5.2. Out into the Azores region. That will add further strain across the Mediterranean, and it looks like we already seen that so far this morning. So yeah, we'll just continue to watch this. I think the West Coast should definitely be keeping an eye on things. May or may not be anything, but when we do see earthquake activity up here like this, definitely good to be on guard, right? Remind us that we have or try to remind us to get our earthquake plan in place. Make sure we do have an earthquake plan, and of course stuff to take if we need to get out of here real quick. North Coast, it's going to be a hectic event when that happens. All across the Pacific Northwest, actually. All right. Seismograph stations for now look pretty quiet. I do have the Petrolia station up here. I'm sure this showed up pretty nicely when that earthquake did strike this morning, at 4.7. But that's about the closest station I have to that activity. Mount St. Helens showing a little bit of smaller microquake activity up there right now. Let's check out the space weather activity. It looks like we're starting to stair-step a little bit here with the flaring. I believe those are coming from some new active regions out on the eastern limb. Looks like that's stirring up here slightly. A couple of them. See that bright feature out here. That's going to be from a couple new sunspots here. They are currently not named, but they are a pair of them, it looks like, here overnight. These things have grown somewhat quickly. So we keep an eye on this area as it's rapidly growing and getting complex there within that core of that magnetic structure within that sunspot. So keep an eye on that. Overall threat right now, see what we got, 99% chance for a C flare, M flare at 30, X flare around 1% chance. So a little bit of elevated activity. We see it on the graph. That's about a little bit more active than it has been here in the past couple days. So we'll keep an eye on that. No major expected auroras. No major solar storms headed our way for now. Storm Prediction Center. Well, we're looking at some rain out here across the west. Not a big deal for severe potential. Looks like maybe a little bit of wind down into New Mexico and Colorado, but not a whole lot of threat for severe weather out here today. All right, folks, I'm going to jump off here and try and take some cold medicine. I'll see you guys here in about 2 hours with the drawing. Should be fun. Make sure you get in. I will be turning off the comments here shortly to that video, the 100,000 subscriber giveaway video. It's posted up on the channel, so go check it out. And we got about 340 entries so far. We will be picking out 10 people. I think that chance of winning is quite better than the say for the Powerball later on this evening. I might throw a couple bucks at the Powerball. I don't know. Maybe. You can't win if you don't play, right? You gotta at least try. All right, we'll catch you guys back here at 2 o'clock my time today for the member, or the not the member drawing, but it's a 100,000 subscriber drawing. This is for everyone. You don't have to be a member. You just gotta be a subscriber here on this channel. We'll catch you guys later. Have a good one.